Hey, everybody. On the Run with Beards and Duns back again. Hey, Beards, you got your hunkin' hoodie on again today. What's going on up there in the Bemidji?
I'm telling you, I'm down in my man cave, and I got my park on. It's about 40 degrees down here.
Well, that's right. That's a balmy day.
Yeah,
in
just
Bemidji.
about.
Oh,
So, and I got my Paul Bunyan cap on, with my guide logo on the top, and so yeah, we're it's good. It's fine. It's we're in the month of June already now, and we're getting some nice summer weather up here, and so far the fish have been cooperating, so I can't complain.
Awesome. It's like 90 degrees, man. We're getting into the best part of the year here. I think summer. It gets pretty warm and hot,
pretty humid too, don't it, down there?
Growing up in South Dakota, and it gets up to 100 degrees, and so I kind of like the heat. I like the heat more than I like the cold. That's why I'm where I'm at, and you're
right,
where you're at.
There you go.
So, well, Beards, let's get going here. We finished on our last podcast. We wrapped up the 70s. We got through the 70s, and I ran Black Hills that fall. You had ran that summer, Winnipeg, qualified for the trials. I got mine at Rapid City. Then you actually came back and did another marathon at Eugene at that Oregon OTC. And I don't think I had one more race after the Black Hills Marathon. I went out to Wall Drug like a month later.
Right.
And if anybody, I'll have a hard time believing everybody who might listen to this, if you haven't heard of Wall Drug, where have you been?
No kidding.
It's got to be one of the biggest. I hate to call it a tourist trap.
It is. It's a tourist trap.
But it's really great American ingenuity and capitalism.
And you see signs about Wall Drug 1,800 miles all over the world.
Have you dug Wall Drug?
Right.
Anyway, but Wall Drug was started back in like the 20s during the Depression. A guy named Ted Husted was a pharmacist, and he set up his practice in this little town of Wall, South Dakota. It had a dirt road going through it, and the guy was trying to make a living, and the Dust Bowl hit, and the story, because I met Ted Husted before he passed, and his son Bill Husted, and Bill was a runner, and he decided to put on a run. Well, anyway, Ted, when Bill was a little baby, he was trying to think, how can I help my business and actually help the whole community here, and there was this a gravel road going east and west across South Dakota, and during the Dust Bowl and the Depression, people were leaving. They were bankrupt. They were trying to find a new life out in California. And he'd see the dust of these cars going by all day long. And what he decided to do one day, he thought, how can I get those people to stop? They're heading to Rapid City. It's only another like 60 miles to Rapid City. And they're probably like, we'll just get to Rapid. Well, he got this idea, and he had an ice machine. He could make ice at least. And he went out there on that road and stuck a sign in it. It said free ice water with an arrow pointed towards Wall Drug. And now I've driven across the state of South Dakota I don't know if I've ever done it without air conditioning in the summer. Right. But man, when those cars saw that sign the next day, they were ready for a drink of ice water. And people started pulling into this little town in droves. And a lot of them would stop and get snacks, you know, and they had to get a meal maybe. And they thought, well, hell, we'll stop here. We'll get to Rapid City maybe tomorrow. And all at once, Wall Drug just blossomed because all these people, they didn't have a lot of money, but whatever money they had, they were stopping. They were getting free ice water. Right. And they were selling coffee for a nickel. And if I remember right, I think they still do.
I've still seen signs that say nickel coffee.
So that started growing. Ted's business growing. Bill grew up there. And then went to college at South Dakota State University. And he became a pharmacist. They have a great pharmacy program there. I can say that because my daughter graduated from that program. Well, Bill went back out with his dad and joined his business as a pharmacist. And, they started expanding into food. They have a wonderful cafe. They have let's just call it a souvenir mecca.
Bonanza.
And it became $1 million business. They have dinosaur statues. It's stuff for the kids. Great food. They own a hotel. Anyway, so Bill became a runner late in his adult life through, I think, the influence of Bob Bartling. I think Bob and him were about the same age.
Sure.
And as he was running, Bill, I believe, came and did the Jack 15, and he thought, wow, he's an entrepreneur and a thinker and a developer, and he said, I'm going to put a race on in Wall Drug. Yeah, they had everything else there. So he came up with a distance of 15 miles, and the first wall drug race was in 1979. And Bob Bartling told me about it, and I said, "Geez, Bob, this sounds great." And I was fit after my marathon, and so we went out there and ran the first official wall drug 15 mile.
Wow.
And I had pictured the Badlands of South Dakota, which is just south of Wall Drug. It's unreal. It's just like you're in another freaking planet.
It is.
Unfortunately, that's like a national park, and you need all kinds of permits, and it's like a freaking Mojave Desert. Well, north of Wall Drug is like nothing but wheat fields and prairie.
Oh, yeah.
Guess where they decided to run the 15-mile race? North of town. Nothing out there. Flat as a pancake. You could... Heck, the only thing I saw was like telephone poles.
I bet.
There was nothing. There was nothing there. Flat as a pancake. And there was like an out. You did a big loop, like a mile out, and like 12-mile loop. And then by the time you got back to the finish, you had 15 miles. So I ran it, and I was fortunate enough to win it that first year. The guy commissioned sterling silver belt buckles. He kind of used the rodeo theme of like, rodeo professionals, if they win a big rodeo, they get that big old buckle, you know, which shows they were the champion. Well, he had these buckles. Bears, I got this buckle. It looked like a freaking breastplate on me, skinny little runner. And it was, I don't know what the value of that thing would be, and then the second, third, fourth, they got belt buckles, all the age groups. And unfortunately, the first year he got like 50 runners. I think everybody walked away with something. And a T-shirt, he got a free spaghetti feed, and all for the cost of your registration, which was $4.
Isn't that something?
God, think about races today, what people pay. Anyway, so we encouraged Bill. He was really kind of disappointed that more people hadn't showed up. But you got to remember, to get to Wall Drug, and this race would have been like first weekend of October or so. It's a bit of a haul, and we thought a lot of Rapid City runners would have come, but they just didn't. And somebody said, give it a year for the word of mouth.
Right.
I'm going to be telling all my friends about this race, how much fun it was. So he did it the second year, 1980, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself. And I came back, and I was fortunate enough to win it again. And he still got about 50 runners.
Oh.
And there's this thing in South Dakota, East River, West River.
Right.
For anybody from the east to go west, it is a 4-hour
long
drive.
haul.
It's a long haul. And I think a lot of runners, there were so many races going on in the late 70s and early 80s that you didn't have to travel very far every weekend to find a race. And the distance of 15 miles might have been a little prohibited or a little scary for some people. That's a little more than a half marathon.
Exactly.
And I think the Rapid City people, I hope there anybody from Rapid listening, I think they were always a little jealous of Bill Husted and the success he had in Wall Drug. And he was making big bucks.
Oh, yeah.
Through his marketing and entrepreneurship. And Rapid City, I think there was a little bit of a, and that might be my perspective. A lot of the runners didn't make the 50-mile, 60-mile drive to go there. So after 2 years of trying this, and he gave sterling silver belt buckles, I should go get one. I could hold it up here in front of you. And I still have. That's one of the few awards I kept. He canned it. He did 2 15-mile road races in Wall Drug, 1979, 1980, and he said, no moss. I think he was a good businessman. He saw what he was putting into it. He had a passion for it. And he was hoping to grow it.
Right.
And it just wasn't getting any traction.
No.
And he pulled the plug. Well, that's my ending 1979 into early 1980. But then, I'm going to finish talking here in just a minute, because my 1980 was pretty much wiped out because of an injury. And your 1980, I can't wait to hear you tell us about it, because I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. But I went into track. I had track eligibility that spring. And so in like January, we started track workouts. We hadn't had any races yet. And I was fit coming off that 220 marathon that I think I ran 120 at Wall Drug for 15 miles. And I was in great shape. And so we started our indoor season. And one of the workouts we traditionally would do is it's called 70-90. You run a 70-second 400 meters, and then you run a 90-second 400 meters. So you're running at 440 per mile pace, which is moving along.
Yeah.
But then for 1/4 mile, which is 2 laps on that little track, indoor track, and then you'd run a 90-second quarter, which is a 6-minute mile. Now, after running a 440 mile, I sure did get a test.
No, done. Let me step
in.
in here for a second. That you ran on that indoor track at South Dakota State. It was like a square track.
The D-shaped track.
Yeah.
The 2 corners at like almost like 180s or whatever you call it. And so I was fit. Joel Brandt was coming along, and I think it was, we broke up into milers, did separate workouts, the 3 and 6 milers, and I fell in, and Joel and I kind of fell into that group. We did some longer ones like interval. So Joel and I hooked up, and it was in mid-January or something. And Undy said, yeah, I want you guys to do the 70-90 tonight. So we did it, and it was 6 miles. So we did 6 miles. And if you do the math, you do a 6-minute mile or you do a 4:40 mile. That's 5:20 per mile pace for 6 miles, but you're doing it the hard way.
Right.
A 4:40, a 70-second quarter, then a 90-second quarter.
Workout.
It's a tough workout. And so we got into it, and Joel and I were feeding off each other. And I remember we went through 3-4 miles, and and those 90s were never over 90. They were usually between 85 and 90 because it felt easy. Well, we got to about the 5th mile, and I was starting to struggle, and I remember thinking, man, this is a killer workout. But Joel was looking good, and pride, and you're 22, and you think you're the best in the world. And so I suffered through it. I got through, and we did the 6 miles at alternating 70 and 90-second quarters. And, good for me. But I remember after that run, what I ended up doing was tearing my, it's called your fascia lateral tendon, FTL or something like that. It holds your it's by your IT band, holds your IT band and your quadricep muscle in place as fascia.
Oh.
It's not an uncommon injury, and I tore it, and it is a notoriously slow healer. I missed indoor. I missed outdoor. My whole season was wiped out. Now, I'm not saying that one workout is what caused it, but it was kind of the catalyst.
It sure didn't help it.
Didn't help it. I'm off the track. I'm not running a step. And I finished my college career watching, clerking meets for Scott and stuff like that. And so I was a little bummed out, but I was getting married May 31st.
Yeah.
And so, even though things might not have been going well in my running life, things are going really well in my personal life. And so I was graduating college in May, looking forward to getting married, and starting to run a little bit. The season was pretty much winding down. I didn't run the conference. I couldn't run any races. I was injured. I just couldn't do it. And it was the end of my college career. And so I ended with a fizzle. And but had this wedding coming up. Now, in the meantime, Dick Beardsley is in Excelsior, Minnesota. And Beards, what were you doing maybe January, February, March, April of 1980?
So I was running every day. I was running, 120 to 130 miles a week, something like that. But I was just worn to the core. I was just worn out all the time. And I remember we lived on this second floor of this apartment building in that little town, and gosh, I'd walk up the stairs and I'd be panting like a dog that just has been laying out in the hot sun all day. And I remember I ran in March of 1980
the inclement 25K.
Yes, which is now called the Ron Dawes Memorial 25K.
That is awesome. They named it after Ron Dawes.
And it's in Hopkins, Minnesota. It's a 2-loop course with lots of hills.
I ran it in 83. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so I run this race, and I come around the first lap, and I'm dragging. I'm ready to quit. And I run by my first wife, Mary, who's out there watching and cheering, and I'm just way behind. I'm shaking my head. She goes, are you injured or what? I go, no, I just don't feel very good. I think I'm going to drop out. And I remember yelling at me, you keep going.
That's tough love.
Yeah. So I did the other loop. I honest to gosh, if I didn't finish, I had to finish. I didn't finish last, but gosh dang close to it.
Now, Beards, you had run 2:20 just a few months earlier.
Right. Yes.
So now you're having a hard time finishing.
In like September. Okay. Now I'm having trouble finishing. Here's what I thought. I honestly thought I had lost that zest and that desire, and it was gone. And finally, my mom convinced me to go to the doctor. So I go to the doctor. They run all these tests, and my hemoglobin and all that stuff is super, super low. And, back then they didn't have the testing like they do today. And I remember the doc telling my mom, because my mom worked for the doctor, that, we think your son might have leukemia. Well,
wow.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear that. Well, they did more tests. They found out I was super anemic. So they started me on some iron, over-the-counter iron supplements, and done. Within like 10 days, oh my gosh, it was like I got revitalized, and I had, qualified for the Olympic trials, and so I'd been sick all winter, but I kept up the running. So I looked at it like, well, gosh, it's almost like I was training at 10,000 foot altitude, right?
I was going to get, as a physiologist, this intrigues me because, you have to move oxygen to your muscles for them to perform. And if you're not carrying the oxygen molecules down to the muscles that are active, and you're basically starving them, but your body's trying to, your mind is strong enough to keep your body moving, but your body's like, we have to do something. So you develop more capillaries.
Yeah.
You get more miles per gallon because you're not getting as much fuel,
Right.
oxygen. So you were adapting, like you just said. You might have been like, you might as well have gone to 10,000 feet,
Yes.
which a lot of athletes do, and train for a few months. They don't train fast at altitude because you can't, and you couldn't. It doesn't
No.
sound like either, but you still were training.
Yeah. So
And
I was still training, and here was my plan. My plan was I'm going to run the Olympic trials, so I could tell my kids and grandkids that the old man, qualified,
made it, yeah.
and made it. And then that was it. I was going to be done with my running. I really was. We were going to have a dairy farm and whatnot. And so anyhow, I go into the trials without any expectation. I'm going to run it, and me, Don, I always would always go out a little bit faster than I normally. I mean, I just like to go out with the lead pack. But that day I just went out, kind of got in the middle of the pack, and gosh dang it, by like 5-6 miles, I'm feeling good, and I'm passing people, and I ended up, for the first time in my marathoning career, I broke 2 hours and 20 minutes for the first time. I ran 2 hours, 16 minutes and 1 second. I finished 16th place out of a couple hundred runners, and I remember, Dunn, I wasn't through the chute, and I remember thinking, and then Mary came running up, and I told her, I said, I'm not quitting now.
Wow.
And so, done. If let's say I would have gone in there, maybe ran another 220, 222, we probably wouldn't be talking right now.
Well, we'd be talking, but not on a podcast,
Exactly.
probably. Wow. And so, Beards, you went from a 2:20:22 that fall before.
Yeah.
Now it's May, I believe, was the Olympic trials.
Yes.
It was in May. And you dropped over 4 minutes in that one race from
Yes.
2:20:22 to 2:16:01. And you knew there was still more in the tank.
I did. It was just something.
Wow.
I don't want to say it felt easy,
Yeah, well,
but
hindsight, yeah.
but it felt easy. I mean, especially coming off of being with this iron deficiency for so many months, and it's like, gosh, I can't give up on it now.
Well, that is, if anybody's listening to this, this is the dream. You train, you do okay. You say, what if I do some more? You got that anemia, which maybe actually, the silver lining at the time, it didn't seem like a good thing. Maybe that did help your
Right.
body make that adjustment, how do you explain it?
I know.
You finished the race. This isn't done yet. Now you just ran 2:16, finished 16th in the United States. If you were the 16th best golfer in the United States, I wonder how much that guy makes a year. What if you're the 16th best anything, basketball, football?
Yeah.
I don't know how they rank, all that, but wow. I mean, that's you're in the big leagues now.
Yeah.
Do you remember as soon as that race was over, you were living hand to mouth?
Right.
And you get on your plane, you're heading back to Excelsior, kind of like on a cloud,
Right.
and you're thinking, what's next? Was Jack 15?
Yes.
There you go.
And
June.
that was
June.
huge.
Yeah,
Yes.
within a month of that. Okay,
Yes.
go ahead. I'm not going to. Now, I was injured. I think I was just starting to run. I wasn't in any shape. So I didn't even go up to the Jack. I didn't run it. I didn't go up to watch. I kind of forgot you were coming.
Done.
Go for it. What happened at the Jack?
So the Jack 15 was this little race that I shouldn't say. Well, it is little as far as numbers. Never had giant numbers. It's out in South Dakota, but it's been around for. It's one of the longest running road races in the upper Midwest. And I went out there, and it was a turning point in my running. It really was. So I went out there, and I was, coming off the Olympic trials, and I was, my confidence had been boosted tremendously from that race.
Oh, sure.
And I went out there and, took off right away. And a guy named Warren Idy. Warren was a really good runner from Fargo.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
All-American. Yeah.
And it was a nice day to run. And I broke away from him at about maybe 8 miles or something. And so I was on my own the last little bit, but I felt so good and done when I ended up finishing. And honestly, now, you know me, I would never say this to other people, but in my mind, when I got done, I ran like an hour, 14 minutes, and you probably know.
I think it was like 1:14:28. And it's got, just to tell people, it's a 15.2 mile race. Now, it doesn't take a mathematical genius to figure out if you run a 1:15 for 15 miles, that's
right.
5 minutes a mile.
Yes.
Well, you just ran 15.2 miles in 1:14 and
yes.
change. I think it came out to about 4:55 a mile.
Yeah. Yes.
Which, if you're not keeping track of this, that's about 30 per 10K. So you put together two 30 10Ks and still had another 5K at that pace. And how were you feeling?
Oh, done. So honestly, when I finished, I was obviously elated, but inside me, I thought, at the time, now I really thought I could have
run another 11 miles.
Yes,
I love it.
But you know, things change as you get beyond 20 miles. But that was such a huge confidence builder for me, and then it led into the next marathon I ran, but I don't want to get out of whack here.
Okay. So I have to admit to you, I wasn't there. I didn't see it. I kind of regret that now.
Yeah, thanks there, pal.
I had to be there to support my bud. But I got up the next day. You know, we didn't have internet. Nobody could look at the Argus Leader newspaper, huge newspaper in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. They always had all the results.
Yeah.
And, you know, whoever the race director, probably Bob, would send the results off, and I don't know how they sent them. Telegraph. No, but it was in the paper the next day. The results were there. And I remember looking, and I had to kind of do the double take.
Right.
Because the 1:14 didn't make sense.
No.
You know, it's like, was this a typographical error or something? And then I don't know if I might have called you that night or I talked to some other runners or something. And it was like, oh my gosh. All at once I thought, hey, you know, my 10K pace for my PR is 4:55 a mile.
Yeah.
For 6.2 miles. I'm not saying to brag that, because Dick just ran 15 miles at that pace. When I finished my 10K, I was done. I wasn't going to run another 10K at that pace, and you were feeling good doing it. And so I know that is a huge turning point. All right, now around the same time,
right?
And we're gonna I have one little story left about me, because 1980 I just soon get over with here as soon as we can for me, but not for you. But I did get married May 31st in Spencer, Iowa. And Dick, I'm always so proud. You were one of my groomsmen, my
Absolutely.
brothers, my two best friends in the world, Dick Beardsley and Al Strottmeyer.
Yep.
And Al, you're going to hear about it on another podcast someday. He's passed now, and Al was just a unique individual, very dynamic, and had a charisma you couldn't believe.
Yeah, he did.
And he was my best training partner. We're good friends, and he was my best man. And as Dick and I had started a tradition at his wedding a year earlier, we did a run the morning of his wedding, just him and I. And then, of course, for my wedding, Dick said, hey, we're going for a morning run. And Al was there as my best man, and Al was really in great shape. And,
sure.
And I was just getting fit, and not fit. I was just running. I said, look,
right.
You guys, I'm good for 5 miles. I can go out running. And they go, that's good. You know, we just want to get a run in with you on your day of your wedding. You know,
right.
Your last day as a bachelor, you know,
exactly.
And all this. So I said, no problem. And I had my stuff, and we got loaded up that morning of my wedding. And I'd been to Spencer, but never really ran around Spencer, Iowa. And so Al, Dick, and I took off from the hotel wherever we were staying. And I said, well, we'll head south of town. And so we went south, and after about a mile, we crossed a bridge, a big river. And then we got to the corner. And if most runners know, I hate out and back routes. I'd rather do a loop. Just see scenery, you know. So we got to the corner. He said, well, let's take a right, and we'll go another mile, because everything's laid out on a grid system. And then we get to that corner. We'll do like a mile out, a quarter mile, 4 miles around, and then back to, maybe it's going to be closer to 6 miles. Okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
We're going conversational pace. We're not
right.
pushing it. We're not racing. We're just out there enjoying each other's company and the day. And it was getting hot. And as we kept going,
getting hot. I remember that.
We're heading back, so we should be crossing this river. But what we quickly found out, there wasn't a bridge that we could cross the river. The road just kind of followed the river. And we said, well, let's go another mile, and we'll hit a crossroad. Okay. So we go another mile, and then we go another mile. And all the ones we realize, we're 6 miles into this run.
Yes.
And we haven't made the crossing back across the river. Because I'm thinking if we cross the river, we will be back to our hotel.
Right.
Well, little did we know, we would have had to go like 10 more miles to cross that darn river. We didn't know that, but and it's like 6 miles. I'm getting to the end of my my range. Well, we stop and we go, well, what? You know, we're looking at our watches. I have to be back for like pictures and stuff
and
like
you
that.
got a wedding coming up.
I got a wedding. It sounds like a Dick and Dunn, a Beards and Dunn adventure like usual. And so we're standing there, and I go, okay, we got to figure this out. You know, do we stop down, flag down a car, 3 guys out running? No. And Al, I just appreciated Al's enthusiasm. He goes, this river doesn't look that big. He goes, let's just swim the freaking river. He goes, take your shoes off. We'll hold them in the air. And we'll swim, you know, we'll wade until you can't wade, then just kind of side stroke across. And I was a lifeguard. I said, Al, I am not drowned in the morning of my wedding. I said, I can see the paper now. Groom dies morning of wedding, swimming river. So we just made the decision, let's just retrace our tracks. And we did, and we got back, and it was a 12-mile run.
Oh, my gosh.
I have a picture, and I don't have it. Maybe I'll put it on the website, of me laying on the bed in my hotel. I don't know if my mom took it or something. And I'm like, I'm done. I'm wiped out.
Oh, you were toast.
I was toast. I was dehydrated and really over. I wasn't in shape to run 12 miles. But we did it, and now we laugh about it. I don't know if yeah, it was the day of my wedding, and so I was pretty enthused. And
Mikey, and congratulations to you and Karen Kay. You know, just on the 31st, like you said, 43 years.
43 years ago, that story occurred. But anyway, so that's my contribution here. And so the wedding was done. We had a great time, big party, and we went off on our honeymoon in Beards. You now have, let's see, we're talking the end of May, so we're into June. You did the Jack in June.
Yep.
Jack 15's over. You've got running shoe companies knocking down the doors trying to sign you to a contract, right?
Yeah, it was, well, you know.
I don't think so.
No, I didn't. And I was getting some free shoes from New Balance.
Oh, okay.
And then, you know, then they were giving me some free shoes, so that was good. I didn't have to duct tape my shoes together anymore.
You weren't getting paid by them?
No.
No money?
No, not at the Not the time. I was getting free shoes, but then in maybe August of 1980, you know, and that Jack 15 helped me. You know, they saw the results, and gosh, the guy's running sub 5-minute pace, you know, for 15.2 miles. And so then they signed me to a small contract where I was getting $500 a month. And that was amazing.
That's the runner's dream. And when did Coach Bill Squires come into the equation?
Not until,
was it Falmouth?
No, it was. So that's when they did it. I went out to Falmouth. Mm-hmm. They brought me out to Falmouth in 1980. August
Tell people
of 1980.
what Falmouth. Tell them. And Falmouth is huge to this day. What is Falmouth?
So Falmouth is a big road race out in Cape Cod, out in Massachusetts, and you run from this lighthouse into this small little town of Falmouth, and it's a huge race.
Thousands.
Still is, thousands. And still is to this day. And so New Balance brought me out there because the only guy I'd ever met from New Balance was a guy named Hal DeWaltoff, who gave me a free pair of shoes. You know, when I snuck into that sporting goods convention, got kicked out 3 times, and so they flew me out, and I remember Coach Squires picks me up, and he takes me, you know, he says, Dickie. He called me Dickie from the first time he met me. He goes, Dickie, I got a buddy down on the Cape that we're going to stay at his house tonight and be nice and quiet. And the race was the following morning. I said, oh, great, Coach. So we get there. Well, it's Party City. There's like 20 people staying there, and they're loud, and I'm nervous because New Balance is bringing me out. They paid my way out there. So I go upstairs to find a bedroom to sleep in at about 9 o'clock at night, and all the bedrooms are taken. You know, people had stuff in the room. So I grabbed a blanket off of a bed and a pillow, and I went to sleep in the hallway. Okay. Well, Coach comes up about midnight, and that Boston accent, Dickie, what the hell are you doing sleeping on the floor? I go, Coach, there's no room. He said, will you take mine? I go, Coach, I can't do that. No. You're running a race in a few hours. You take my room. So reluctantly, I went in, slept in his room. Well, I got up about 4 o'clock to go to the bathroom, and I walk in, I flip on the bathroom light, and I catch something out of the corner of my eye, and I look. there's Coach Squires sleeping in the bathtub with a towel over him for a blanket.
My gosh.
That's the kind of guy he was.
And I've met Coach Squires on a couple occasions, and he was a one of a kind.
He really was. And so the next day I get up, I run Falmouth, and I ran terrible. I mean, terrible.
After that night.
Okay, I ran a little under 5 minute per mile pace.
Right.
And it was so far back in the pack, it wasn't even funny. And I thought, I get done, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, New Balance is probably going to make me walk home, and
take the shoes off your feet.
Yeah, give them back. But one of the guys picked me up and took me to the airport, and he goes, Dick, listen, we didn't bring you out here to judge you on this race. We brought you out here to meet you, and we like you, and the race just happened to be going on, so we thought you'd like it. And so then it was Coach Squires that actually took me to the airport, and he asked me, he says, Dickie, he says, do you have a coach that you're working with? I go, no, I taken things I learned from my college coaches and Ron Dawes' book, Self-Made Olympian. I'm just kind of putting them together. He says, well, if you'd like a coach, I'd be more than happy to coach you. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. So I started to work with
Tell people
Squires.
who Coach Squires has coached up to this point.
Yeah, so Coach Squires has coached Bill Rogers, King of the Roads, Alberto Salazar,
all the Boston runners, Bobby Hodge.
Bobby Hodge, Dick Mahoney. Started the Greater Boston Track Club as their coach, and the guy, magnificent, very smart runner. He was a 407 miler at Notre Dame.
Back in like the 50s.
Yeah, 1957.
Yep.
And so just very knowledgeable, wonderful guy. And so I was tickled pink, and my running really started to improve. So then that fall, I went out to back to the Oregon Track Club Nike Marathon out in Eugene, Oregon. And this time, though, because I had, run 2:16 at the trials, they flew me out and everything.
Good.
So done. That was another big turning point for me. So I got up that morning of the race, and at that point, I was always trying to run a faster time, so I would write my splits on my arm. And I started writing my splits on my arm, and I got about the third or fourth mile, and I stopped. I remember thinking, if I'm ever going to see if I can run with the big boys, I got to forget about my splits and just go with the pack. So I went in there with the idea I'm going out with the lead pack, and I hung on for about 15, 16 miles, and then Tony Sandoval and Jeff Wells.
Wow.
They won the race that day. They tied 2:10.
Yeah.
So I get this. So the first 9 finishers got an all-expense paid trip for 2 to the Honolulu Marathon that December.
Wow.
So we're finishing up the race, and you finish on the famous Hayward Field, one lap of the track. So I hit the track, and right next to me is Herm Atkins.
Oh, sure.
And Herm was like a 2:11 marathoner. Yeah. Heck of a runner.
Outstanding runner. So we hit the track side by side. And again, the last thing you want to do in a marathon is have to sprint. So he's sprinting, I'm sprinting, and he outleans me at the tape. So I get 10th, he got 9th. He gets to go to Honolulu, but I ran 2:15 that day. Yeah, another personal best.
Another personal
like
best.
6th or 7th in a row now.
Yeah, but again, that race, I thought, okay, I can't run with the big boys all the way yet, but I'm getting a little bit closer, So that was a big turning point done.
Man, I got to take a few deep breaths here now.
I'm getting worn out.
All right. Now we're getting into, so that was late summer, August maybe?
September.
Well, then, wait a minute. New York's in like October, isn't it?
Right.
First weekend of November? And didn't you run that?
I did. I ran the New York City Marathon. Do you want me to tell that story?
Yeah, I think we have enough time just for that one.
Okay.
Here's what happened. Beards, I got to admit, I was training hard. You were training hard. And we didn't have internet. We didn't have cell phones. And, we'd talk occasionally. But, I knew you were running New York. And so we knew that. And I just remember I kind of forgot when New York was, and it wasn't on live TV anymore. It wasn't yet on ABC. They might have delayed.
No, 1980. It was live.
Was it live?
It was live that day.
And I don't think I knew that. All I know is I got a phone call from Al Stratmeyer, and I'll let you, and when you get to the point of the story where he called me up, and he goes, Don, you're not going to believe this. So you show up in New York City on first weekend in November.
I show up in New York City in 1980. It was late October, I think, that year. And so, again, my mindset was I'm going out with the leaders. So I went out with the lead pack, and it was kind of a rainy, kind of a windy, chilly day. And so Bill Rogers is going for his fifth consecutive New York City Marathon win. So we're about 14 miles into the race, and we're all tightly bunched. There's about 10 of us at this point. And we're going around a corner, and somehow Bill Rogers and I got our legs tangled up, and we went down like a sack of potatoes. And I hit the pavement, and I rolled a couple of times. My hip is all bleeding, my elbows. I look back, and Bill's
facing the wrong way.
Yeah, facing the wrong way.
I've seen the photo, yeah.
Yeah, another runner coming behind us. Of course, he stopped and helped Bill up, and they just went flying by me. So done.
Right?
I jump up, and by the time I get up and realize what happens, the lead group's probably like a partner a block in front of me. So stupidly, instead of just working my way back, I took off in like a dead sprint.
You wanted to recapture the group.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I catch up to him just before we go over the Queensboro Bridge. So when you go over the Queensboro Bridge, they don't allow any spectators up there, and all you hear is the wind coming through the steel girders and stuff. Well, I had adrenaline coming out every open part of my body. So we get up to the top and of the bridge, and then we still had some flatness before it goes back down onto First Avenue. And I was feeling my oats at that point. I thought, I'm going for it.
Lord.
So I take off. I open up about 150-meter lead. And so now I've got motorcycle cops in front of me. I got the ABC television station in front of me. And I come down onto First Avenue where the biggest crowds are at New York City. And the roar of the crowd for that first person off the bridge, it literally melted my legs. And the roar of the crowd, the sirens are going, and I get down onto First Avenue, and I'm just flying. And all of a sudden, I see something out of the corner of my eye, and I look over, and it's Coach Squires. He's sprinting alongside me in his Sunday go-to-church shoes, and he goes, Dickie, what in the hell are you doing? And I looked at Coach. I go, Coach, I'm winning the New York City Marathon.
Well, you were at that point.
So then, my dad was telling me this later because, of course, I was running the race, wasn't watching.
I got a phone call about that, and Al Stratmeyer
go ahead.
And he goes, Don, Beardsley's leading the New York City Marathon. And I go, what? It's like, now I knew you were fast, but leading the New York City Marathon. Anyway, I don't think I could get to a TV or something.
Yeah.
I just remember he was so excited, and I said, well, call me when it's over or something. Anyway, go ahead, Beards.
Yeah, so I remember, my dad and Mom were watching it back home in Minnesota, and Jim McKay, he was the guy that was on Wild World of Sports, and Frank Shorter, the Olympic gold medalist. Frank was the analyst, and Jim McKay, as I come down under First Avenue after about a quarter mile, Jim turns to Frank and says, so, Frank, who is the guy out front with that high number? And Frank says, I have no idea, but
Cream, yeah.
No, what did he call me?
A cream puff or a...
Yeah, he says, I have no idea, but he looks like a cream puff to me. my dad's like yelling at the television. So that eventually the pack caught me. Yeah. And that was the year that Alberto Salazar made his debut.
2009, yeah.
Yeah, and he came in there, still in college, if I remember right, and said, I'm going to win the New York City Marathon and break 210.
Yeah.
And he did. So, but I finished, Bill finished 5th, ran 2:13 and change. I finished 9th and ran 2:13.
Top 10.
And so So then that night, this is the best story of all. So that night I'm at the banquet. I don't know anybody. You know, I'm there by myself, standing over in a corner, and I see Bill Rogers. He was like my marathon mentor. Right. You know, I'd never met him before. Starts walking over towards me, and he gets up right about a foot away from me, and he's not smiling or nothing. He looks at me, says, "Are you Dick Beardsley?" And I go, "Yes." I called him Mr. Rogers. I go, "Yes, Mr. Rogers."
I love it.
And he took his hands and put them around my neck and started choking me. I mean, not hard, but he started choking me. And then he breaks out in that big Bill Rogers grin, and he says, "Dick, no hard feelings. That's what racing is all about." And we've been great friends ever since.
That is so awesome. I guess he was thinking this poor guy is going to blame himself and beat himself up for the rest of his life.
Well done. Yeah. Not only was I blaming myself, the papers were saying that I tripped him. Some people was like, "Yeah, Beardsley fell down and Rogers was right behind him, so he stuck his leg out."
Lord.
I mean, some of the accounts I read were terrible.
All right.
Yeah.
No, and I don't know, Beards, time has gone by. I don't think you have to worry about it anymore. But did you get something in the mail from the New York City Marathon after you got back?
I did.
Go ahead. Are you comfortable with all?
Oh,
I think
for sure.
What did you get in the mail?
So So Fred Lebow was the race director for New York City, and of course, now remember, we're strictly amateurs.
Right.
We can't. There's no prize money. If you took anything, you could lose your amateur status.
Correct.
But I get the envelope in the mail about a week or two later, and I open it up, and there's a check in there for $1,500 for finishing ninth.
I remember you telling me this. Yeah.
And it was that's what they called under table payments back then. And I guess the top 10, there was some, Bill and Frank, I'm sure knew all about that kind of stuff. But I was so naive. I thought, and that was a lot of money.
Yeah. What a shock. What a surprise.
Total.
I mean,
total shock.
That is cool. Wow. And I just remember the next morning, I did not know how, and this sounds ridiculous, but in 1980, no internet didn't exist.
No.
For some reason, I don't know why, I don't know how you did. I don't know how you did.
I can't believe I didn't call you.
Well, you might have had a few, Bill was strangling you for one thing.
True, that's true.
But I got up and I was living in an apartment, Country Club Estates. It's in Sioux Falls, really nice condos.
Right.
And Karen worked in the sales office, so we got one really cheap. But anyway, I lived next to some really well-to-do people, and they all had the paper delivered to them. Well, I didn't have enough money to order the paper and have it delivered. So I got up that next morning to go out for a run, and I was thinking, God, I wonder there's a newspaper laying there. And so it's my neighbor's paper. And, papers are hygienic. Nobody, not untouched by human. No. So I kind of snuck over there and go, God, if that guy opens the door, I reached down and I peeled out the sports page and, licked my finger and started paging through it. And I got to the scoreboard, they called it, where you had all the golf scores, all the baseball or whatever season it was, football scores. And then they'd have New York City results, top 50. I'm not making this story up, Dick. And I hate to tell you this. Guess where I started looking for your name? I went to 50th place.
I don't blame you.
And I started sliding my finger up. And I'm not, God, I don't see it. I get to the top 25. What happened to Dick? And then I slide up and I get to 15th, and I'm thinking, oh God, didn't he? I wonder if he, did he not finish or what? And I slide up, and I kid you not, Beards, 2:13:55.
Yes, 9th
place. Beards, I don't know if you were more excited or if I was more excited. I think I started laughing. I was out there in this hallway all alone by myself, and I think I started laughing and shaking my head thinking, what in the world is going on? Because, in my mind, Dick's still Dick from South Dakota State, my training buddy.
Right.
And, sometimes I'd run a little better than Dick, and sometimes he'd beat me a few times, and we'd have workouts where he was a hurting unit, and we suffered along pretty much side by side. All at once, I'm looking at this, and I'm going, God darn it. And, Beards, you and I talked about it when we were training sometimes. I said, wouldn't it be cool if we could make a career out of this? Or
I know.
A living? And we go, yeah, you could. Wouldn't that be awesome?
I know.
To do what your passion, your love.
Right.
And you actually made money doing what you like. And it was a dream. And I always kind of wanted it for myself. And I've said this a million times, and I'm not just telling you this. I said, if it didn't happen to me, I am so glad it happened. And let's be honest, it happened to you. And it's not anything I didn't do or you did better or whatever. You trained and committed yourself to it. And I was training hard and committing myself to it. And you kept taking it to the next level. And I was so proud. There's nothing and happy. I had, and I don't think we've ever had a heart-to-heart. I have never felt 1 ounce of envy or jealousy. Not a bit. And
and done. You never showed it, and I know you didn't. And part of the reason that I was fortunate to get to where I did was because of your friendship and some of those training runs we had, and you were always encouraging to me, and you always you'd get as excited as I would after I would run a good race or something,
What's that called? I was living my life vicariously through you. No.
Yeah.
I was living my life. You were living your life.
Right.
And we were both having a good time at that point. And, Beards, I got to take a break, man.
I'm worn out.
I'm exhausted.
I'm worn out.
And so, I think this is a good spot. And I need to go for a workout. I'm going to get on my bike now and go out and smash it for about an hour.
There you go.
Beards,
good for
thanks,
you.
bud.
Well, yeah, we want to thank everyone for listening. And if you have any questions for Dunn and myself or comments about the show, you can contact us directly on our website, beardsanddunpod.com, or leave us a comment on our Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, all at Beards and Dunn Pod.
And, of course, YouTube. That way you can see us if you want. But if you go to YouTube, hit the comment. We'd love to hear what people are thinking about this because, I got to admit, I don't know if people are really. I've heard some people like it. I'm sure a lot of people get bored with it. I don't know. If you'd like more, to know when these things are coming out, hit the subscribe button. We'd love that. And thanks for listening.
Hey, and Dunn, one last thing. I don't, who knows how many people are listening, but I'll tell you what. I'm having so much fun doing this with you.
I hope if there's nobody watching it, I'm fine with it.
I don't even care.
I know. I do.
We're such good buds, and just to remember all these things, and we're getting up there in age now, Dan. We might not be able to remember this.
I'm hoping these are going to be. They are being recorded so someday I can listen to it and go, I don't remember any of that stuff.
Exactly. Hey, have a good bike ride, Dunny.
Hey, thanks, bud. Talk to you next time.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.